And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Toledo is a game by Martin Wallace in which you are basically making swords and then taking those swords and presenting them to the Emperor. Now, Martin Wallace is known for his fairly complicated, or at least very intricate designs that he has that sometimes tend to be more for experienced gamers. But Toledo is not like that. It's a game that's actually very accessible to people who haven't played before. It's very simple and easy to get into. Like I said, it's about making swords and then presenting them to the Emperor. If you look at the board here, the board begins with a series of empty spaces that lead all the way up to the palace at the top, but these spaces are going to be quickly filled up with different businesses from the players. And each business does a different thing, and as players move their pieces around the board, they will be landing on their own business where they can do something for free, or on someone else's business where they can pay that person to take advantage of the opportunity. So in essence, it's kind of like a roll and move game. Now, the materials needed to make these swords, well, let me show you the swords first. Here's an example of 2 swords in the game. And if you notice, the top one needs 3 jewels and 3 pieces of metal, and the bottom one only needs 3 pieces of metal, but there's a big difference in the victory point value, so having jewels certainly gives you much more, a much better sword. And the visual effect isn't so bad. The pieces of metal are little cardboard counters, and the jewels themselves are little plastic crystal jewel pieces. And that's nice. It adds a nice flair to the game, although I wouldn't mind having like some little swords that you could have too. But hey, we can't have everything. Moving the pieces, the pawns, your typical wooden pawns, is done through a series of cards. Players have these cards, and each card is basically just a number. And there's a few other features on the card, but let's just look at the numbers for now. And that's basically it. As players will be getting these cards in their hands, and when they're moving characters on the board, they can play as many movement cards as they want, as long as they're all the same. So, for example, if I play a 3 movement card, I can move one of my pawns 3, and then I can move that same pawn 3 again, or another pawn 3, as long as I have 3 cards in my hand. So to do a lot of moving on one turn, you need to have a lot of cards of the same number. And you also must move exactly what the card numbers say. So if I get 3s in my hand, then I must use 3. I can't move 2 or 1. I have to move 3. And when you land on different spaces, you get to do what that says. You can take some jewels. You'll be able to take these metal resources. You'll be able to take different swords. There's only a limited amount of each kind of sword. And so you want to be the first one to get that tile, and as long as you have the resources to make that sword and then present it to the Emperor when you get to the finish line. And there's a few other places, but these cards also act as money. If you land on someone else's business and you take advantage of that business, like taking a gem or taking one of the metal pieces, you have to pay them, depending on where the business is. In the first row, you have to give them a card of 1 or more value. So there's 2 or 3 cards. Those would work fine. In the second row, you got to give them a card of 3 or more value. In the last row, a card of 5 or more value. So having your businesses in the last row assure you of getting really good cards, but fewer people are going to land in the last row. That first row is going to have people constantly landing on that. And that's a nice economic simulation, because you can put your businesses in the first row to get people to land on them, and more people will land there, or in the last row where maybe fewer people will land on them, but you get a much better deal from it. Now, I find the game a little odd because you can do one of several actions on your turn. You can take cards, you can move, or you can place a business on the board. When placing these businesses on the board, I guess that's upside down, when you're placing these businesses on the board, there's really no reason to wait to do that. And what I'm saying is, that's one of the optional actions to do. I would never, ever not place them all immediately on the board. My first actions will always be putting businesses on the board. There's only so many spots. They'll all fill up. And if someone has more businesses than someone else on the board, they will have such a huge advantage, because not only when you land on your own is it free for you to use, but if someone else lands on it, they have to pay you. And so I don't know why they didn't just make that part of the setup. Everyone puts out different businesses on the board. Maybe someone can tell me that there's a strategy about not putting as many as you can. But all that aside, it's still very easy. Move, get resources, draw cards, utilize your cards. The movement system is a little wonky to some people, like if I'm only using 6s, I got to use another 6, and that's a little odd to people, but it still works out pretty well. Now, to me, the best aspect of the game are the duels. When you land on a space that someone else is on, you can basically kick them out of the store and use it for yourself, and to do that, you have a duel. When you have a duel, each player you'll turn over the top card of the deck. And let's say this card is turned over. If you look at the bottom there, is a little yellow duel symbol. Now, if during the course of the game in one of the stores, I have trained my people so that I have this yellow tile in front of me, and you don't have that tile, and we're fighting, when this card is turned over in the duel, this one with the yellow piece on it, I win. However, if we both have yellow pieces, then we look at the card more closely, and it shows here the guy in the white shirt that the attacker wins. Or possibly the defender could win if another card is turned over. And you fight 3 times, and whoever wins 2 out of 3 wins the battle. Now, these battles aren't critical. I mean, at least I haven't ever found that they're that critical. But it is interesting. And it's neat how you can spend some time and train in 3 different skills so that you can be the best dueler possible, while maybe possibly the other players are ignoring that fact and just collecting metal and jewels. This isn't a very deep game. You move, you buy, and you sell. You use cards. There's a lot of luck in getting this. Really, I don't really find the game that attractive to me, because it just seems like it's just, move, roll, get the stuff, move. Not roll, but move, play cards, get the stuff from other players, back and forth a little bit. And whenever there's a duel, I'm very excited. That's the best part of the game for me. But it's just too small for me. However, every person I played it with has really enjoyed it. People have really said that they like the idea of making the swords. The theme is very attractive to them. So what do I know? But I'm telling you, I'm not going to be the one to request to bring this game out. But if someone does, it looks like everyone will have a good time. The theme fits well, and it's simple enough that most folks will understand it.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.